Welcome back to Our Walk in Christ. Today we want to talk about aliens. Are they real creatures or are they a PsyOp? I read that, I realize that the video title is probably incorrect. Real creatures of a PsyOp? No, real creatures or a PsyOp. That should be the video. Let's go ahead and fix that now. So when we re-release this guy, it's fixed. But anyway, we want to talk about aliens because there's so much interest in it. And is it any wonder there's a lot of interest? There's so much attention around aliens these days. It makes us wonder, is there indeed is this indeed some PsyOp or is it something else? We want to ask a few questions. We want to talk about, first, are aliens compatible with the Bible? This is the core of the question. If you believe in the Bible, if you are a Christian, can you believe in aliens or not? This is one of those fundamental questions and at the heart of what is often asked. And I came up with 4 different options here. Once again, my notes are slightly off. Let me do a couple more fixes here. It happens when I write my notes at like 1 a.m. So 4 basic options we have. Number 1. There are no aliens because there is no plan of salvation. This is a view that is held by a friend of mine who works in the field of astronomy. He says, I just can't believe there's aliens because, the Bible is so central. The problem with that, there is an issue. And it kind of goes back, look at Chronicles of Narnia. I'm not telling you any story except your own. What if our Bible tells us our story and there's another race of beings that God has told them their story? That is certainly a questionable thing. Each galactic civilization communicates with God on their own words, and we wouldn't hear about it. And maybe God will allow these 2 groups to communicate, maybe not, which is probably why there's not a lot of massive, overwhelming evidence to the sake of aliens. Option 2, there are aliens, and all of the Bible's references to angels and demons are actually aliens. There are people that hold this view. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later on here. This view here, it suggests that all of the supernatural type elements are actually space aliens. Well, this kind of destroys the purpose of the scripture. So I completely doubt this. Okay, angels and demons are more consistent with the spiritual world described in the Bible. And if you start saying, well, all of these angelic views are actually spacemen, what are you believing in the transpermia as well? That's the modern idea that, life is so complex, they had to be implanted here from aliens. Well, that's fine. Let's support that. Where'd the aliens come from? Okay, it's like evolution. It kicks the can down the road. Option number 3, there are indeed aliens, and God deals with them as he deals with us. If you recall, there is actually a verse in 1 Corinthians, and the verse in 1 Corinthians says, "For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him." And indeed, if that is true, then God would have also made aliens, and he deals with them as he deals with us. As the sovereign God in control of everything, that is an option. Option number 4, there are indeed no aliens. All of the testimony we have is visions. Maybe it's a mass psychosis. Oh no, we just got the stream taken down. Oh well. Let me know if the stream disappears because I said the word mass psychosis. Other evidence that is implanted by society, and this is valid. I mean, there is certainly a lot to this view. This is certainly the most probable in my case, but there are a few things out there that cause me to wonder. Okay, I'm going to get into some of the things that I think caused me to possibly wonder. And as I investigated some of these, I'll tell you kind of where I sit. Before we do that, though, I want to cover 4 different verses where people have pointed to in the Bible to say these are aliens. Now, there are more than these. These are just the most popular ones. Obviously, the most popular is Ezekiel chapter 1, pretty much all of it. Verses 4 to 21 is what I highlighted. Now, this isn't just some organic thing. This was popularized by a 1974 book called The Spaceships of Ezekiel. And this is what the scripture says. As I looked, behold, a storm wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, with a bright light around it. And in its midst, something like glowing metal in the midst of the fire. Within it, there were figures resembling 4 living beings, and this was their appearance. And they had human form. Each one of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their feet were like a calf's hoof. They gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, were human hands. As for the faces and the wings of the 4 of them, their wings touched one another, and their faces did not turn when they moved. Each went straight forward, as from the forms of their faces. Each had the face of a man. All 4 had the face of a lion on the right, the face of a bull on the left. All 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had 2 touching another being, and 2 covered their bodies. With each went straight forward. Whenever the spirit was about to go, they would go, without turning as they went. In the midst of the living beings, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire, like torches darting back and forth among the living beings. The fire was bright, and the lightning was flashing from the fire, and the living beings ran to and fro like bolts of lightning. Now, as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was no wheel on the earth besides the living beings. For each of the 4 of them, the appearance of wheels, and their workmanship was like a sparkling barrel, and all 4 of them had the same form, and their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel were within another. Whenever they moved in any of the 4 directions without turning as they moved. As for their rims, they were lofty and awesome. The rims of all 4 of them were the eyes all around. Wherever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them, and whenever the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels also rose. Wherever the spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction, and the wheels rose close beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Whenever those went, these went, and whenever those stood still, these stood still, and whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose close beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So this is this long, lengthy section. The question is, does this mean there's space aliens? Well, if we look at these verses, we see that indeed these do not align themselves with the modern view of what aliens might look like. This is certainly some view out there, but at the same time, it's nothing that's radically consistent with any alleged alien sighting these days. But that is certainly the most popularized by that book. Next, Zechariah 5:1-2. I lifted up my eyes again and looked, behold, there was a flying scroll. And he said to me, what do you see? And I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 20 cubits and its width 10 cubits. I mean, he's not a flying saucer. I mean, come on. This is believed to be understood as basically a copy of the law, is what this would mean. There is another, of course, we have our alien abduction, 2 Kings 2:11. They were going along and talking, and behold, there was an appearance of fire and horses of fire, which separated the 2 of them. Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Yeah, Elijah, man, he wasn't taken up to heaven. He was abducted by aliens. Problem here, of course, alien abduction we have. The alien came back. They searched everywhere for Elijah. They couldn't find him, and he didn't even have an implant. So we had that. Of course, let's get into the most controversial, Genesis 6:1-4. Oh, who are those sons of God? Well, some people actually hold them to be aliens. There was in fact, a pastor in Roswell. I'm not sure if he's still there. His website, 15 years ago was alienstranger.com. I forgot to check if it still exists. Maybe one of you guys in the comments can let me know. He believes he was abducted by aliens. But in Genesis 6:1-4, it came about when the men began to multiply on the face of the land, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful. They took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he was also in the flesh. Nevertheless, in his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the Son of God came to the daughters of men, they bore children of them. Those were the mighty men of old, men of renown. Now, who are the sons of God in Genesis 6? There have been a lot of different views. One of those being the descendants of Seth. One of those being actual fallen angels. And of course, the one guy takes the fallen angel one and translates that entirely into they're actually space aliens. And then there's a couple other theories out there as well as to who the sons of God are in Genesis 6. And there's valid arguments to be made for all as well, except the alien one. I think that's a little left field. But those are some of the things that we start to see inside of the world. And as we stop and think about it, we have to ask this question about aliens, and I'm getting ready to tip my hand here. All right, so the question is, what do I think? I personally generally take the position that there is not an advanced civilization out there. Okay. Roswell situation, that could be explained by other means. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying there isn't something there. Do I think that what crashed was a weather balloon? No. I would lean towards an experimental government project, whether a United States or whether an international one. I don't know. But I think the situation going on in Roswell could be explainable by other things. There was one event, though, that makes me wonder. Now, there were two, and it started with one of those early images that I showed early on. And that is this image here. If this was actually carved in a cave, I'd be like, wow. But the fact of the matter is, this wasn't. This was actually attached to the Aztec king from the 600s. I forget his name off the top, but that's one of the, this is the great sign of the space aliens. And it's not a great sign of space aliens. I mean, we have to remember the Aztec sacrificed people. This was an implementation of human sacrifice carved on the lid of his sepulcher. And, but this image, if that was real, then that's the case. But I can't find any evidence of this being anywhere in the world except at the UFO Museum. So I don't specifically call that a credible event necessarily. But there is one incident that makes me pause a little bit. And even then, I don't know, after looking at all the different evidences and things, I'm still kind of on the fence. But this is in 1897. So we're predating the Wright brothers here. But in 1897 in Aurora, Texas, there was allegedly a UFO crash with a fatally wounded UFO pilot, which is a small humanoid person. Allegedly, this alien is buried at the cemetery. There is a newspaper article. And in the newspaper article from this time, 6 o'clock in the morning, it goes on this UFO has crashed into, is it Proctor, I think? His windmill. They buried the alien in the cemetery, and there was actually a minister, William Russell Tabor, who officiated the funeral. This guy was a real preacher, I can tell you that. You can find a photograph of his tombstone. He would have been about 17 or 18 years old, which you say, well, that's 17 or 18-year-old. Well, that was not too uncommon for an itinerant preacher in Texas in the 1800s. And so they say this alien was buried with Christian rites. Now, here's the thing about this. This is before flight. It had many town witnesses, and the first refutation in print happened almost 80 years later by a woman who was 3 years old at the time of the incident. All right, and that's what we find down here in the hoax theory. It wasn't until 1980 that Time magazine interviewed Etta Pegues, who is an 86-year-old woman, so this would make her 3 years old at the time of the event. The only other evidence that was found, I believe it was this article. Yeah, it was this article here. The only other thing we can find is somebody had interviewed an 11-year-old boy at the time this occurred. And so the only refutation we have are a few of the kids in the town. This is, again, many people. There is a being buried there. They said the original tombstone marker was gone, although some people say it's still there. It's just in a different place. There was sonar done, and they found an unmarked grave of a small being, but the cemetery will not allow that body to be exhumed. Now, despite this being before flight, there was actually a lot of UFO sightings around this time. It turned out that many of them were linked to things like there was a club of Zeppelins, airships is what they call them. And in fact, that's what the article here on Wikipedia says. It actually says, it makes reference to this being an airship. The sudden appearance of the airship, which had been sailing through the country. So a lot of people had seen this. Now, what the hoax idea says is that this guy, S.E. Hayden, was bitter that a railroad contract bypassed the town, went to another town, and he did this to put the town back on the map. Nobody really refuted it. So the other piece of evidence is the people at the Historical Society of the town. They say that, no, this isn't an alien. This is a child who died of yellow fever. And not wanting to be quarantined as a town, they all conspired together to produce a rumor of an alien. A local ran this in the newspaper. There was, there was this body buried, which was really a child who died of yellow fever. And then the only other interesting piece we have about this is the family who bought the farm after this doctor had the farm. They bought it. Allegedly, all of the remainders of the spacecraft which were consisted of aluminum and some other unknown element, were thrown down into the well shaft. And when the people bought the property, they cleaned out the well shaft, but every single person in that family line from drinking of that well died of symptoms from aluminum poisoning. And so that is some interesting stuff there as well. So this one here is an interesting article for me because it predates flight, although these Zeppelin airships had started going around and had a lot of UFO sightings around the whole country. And does it make sense that a whole town, which even by today's standards is only about a couple thousand people, is it possible that a small village of only about 20 people might conspire together to say this was a yellow fever victim, but let's just say it was an alien, and refuse to allow anybody to dig up the grave to investigate it down the road 60, 100 years later? That is plausible to me. So even this one, I'm like, okay. I'm less intrigued now than I was before. So these are some of the things that make me say, I'm kind of leaning back towards that area of no, let's not suggest that there's aliens at this point in time. But now let's move on to the PsyOp. Because, of course, a PsyOp is used to manipulate people by doing psychological manipulations on people. This is something the government loves to do. I was just sent a meme today, and it said, what did it say? It said, or to believe that the CIA did bad experiments in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way through. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was persecuted. Lots of problems happened, but nothing like that's going on today. I mean, yeah, very good. Well, if you remember, there was this bad election in 2016 where the person who was supposed to get in didn't get in because people didn't want that crap. We didn't want crazy lunatics. But nevertheless, one of the last gasps to restore and win that election was Hillary Clinton promised to share government information on UFOs if she was elected. So it's like, okay, the people are already really interested, and you were like, oh, we want to get the information out. So vote for Hillary and you'll get the truth about UFOs. Now, is Hillary going to release the truth about UFOs, or is she going to release information that's consistent with her PsyOp? That's another question. We're talking about a wicked, evil person. And so are we really giving people the truth, or are we giving them what we want to hear? Now, the next one is an interesting one because NASA in 2016 maybe, NASA issued out over $1 million to the society, the Center of Theological Inquiry, to determine what would happen if people finally came up with evidence of aliens. So, this is an interesting one because you start looking at all the fact checkers. In fact, let's go ahead and have a brief look at the fact checkers first. The fact checkers, and all of them say the same thing. They claim NASA just hired 24 theologians to assess how the world would react if we discovered alien life. The AP assessments, this is false. NASA has not hired any theologians to study the potential reactions humans have with discovery of life. They provided funding in 2015 to the Center of Theological Inquiry in Princeton, New Jersey, for a program to study the potential societal impacts of finding life beyond Earth. Okay, so they didn't hire theologians to study the potential reactions on humans if we discover life beyond Earth. They just provided funding to hire people to find out what would happen of the societal impact of finding life beyond Earth. Okay, I guess we're splitting hairs here. They didn't hire them. They just funded their employment. And it turns out that anytime fact checkers start saying anything at all these days, I mean, this article just came out in December, just 2 months ago, December 28th. That is just not even 2 full months ago. This article comes out. Oh, no, that's not true. That's not false. Why is it that they're commenting on this now when this happened so long ago? In fact, here is the actual article from NASA. This is from NASA, astrobiology.nasa.gov. This is in 2015, I think. Or maybe this is the new one. I don't know. NASA's not dating stuff. This might actually be the podcast. This is one of the theologians discussing what the program was. Back in the day, Changing America, NASA used religious experts. This is The Hill. NASA used religious experts to predict how humans may react to aliens. This is, again, the same day as that other one comes out, December 28th. And of course, way back in the day, back in June 2016, Religious Dispatches asks, should NASA have given $1.1 million to a theological institute? So when the AP comes down or any of these other fact checkers come down and declare something that is fake, you better believe it's probably true. I mean, let's look at the other things. Biden crack pipes. Did you guys hear about this? This is this week. So what happened is the Biden administration was starting to fund the bill. Hold on. I have more notes to talk to a friend of mine about this week. This is attached to the harm reduction bill and includes a provision for the equitable distribution of clean crack pipes to minorities. And that was explicitly in the bill. Smoking pipes for illicit substances, quote, in the bill. All of the fact checkers come out and say, well, that's not true. Mostly false. Why is it mostly false? Well, because the bill was about other things. That was just a small provision of it. Now they said it's outdated because Jen Drink Some Sake came out and just, was like, well, that's not in there. And so he's like, well, was it ever there? Well, it's not there. It might still be there. In fact, it's there. BMJ, misinformation. Is this the British Journal of Medicine or the British Medical Journal? I forget which one. Huge journal over in UK. It released a very well done peer study review that was counter to the narrative of the COOF, and so Facebook marks it as misinformation, tries to bury it. They're actually suing Facebook over that because all the fact checkers are saying this isn't true, despite the peer-reviewed medical journal says it is. Who do you believe, Facebook's fact checkers or the medical guys? How about Ottawa? Okay, what's going on in Ottawa right now? Literally right now in Ottawa, there is a freedom convoy. The truckers are out there. If you turn on any single mainstream media, there's white supremacist evils who are killing people in the streets and burning down apartment buildings. Yeah, the police there's no crime attached to it. This city streets has had I think it's like an 800% reduction in crime. People are going out there cleaning up the streets and stuff. It's cleaner now than it has ever been. And meanwhile, Justin Trudeau's like, all these guys it's the talking points. They're racist, they're supremacists. All this. In fact, just before starting the stream today, this isn't in my notes because it just happened. There was the Beyond Meat conference this week. The Beyond Meat conference suggests that meat eaters are linked to white supremacy worldviews. Yeah, guys, it's just a talking point. It's just demonize everybody. January 6th, the FBI came out and said there is no insurrection January 6th. All the facts are, big insurrection, everyone's going to kill everyone. Yeah, most disorganized insurrection ever, complete with police waving people on in. There's a reason they have not released any footage about that, guys. If the fact checkers are telling you something, they're lying. That's exactly what's going on right here. The AP News, NASA has not hired theologians to study the reaction to alien life. They just funded the hiring of people to study the reactions of finding human life. PsyOp much? I'm telling you guys, I'm telling you. And so what is this? NASA's interested in studying the Christian response to aliens. Is this a way to know how best to introduce aliens or the lack thereof? Is this a means to destroy religion by casting disparity on the Christian faith? I mean, if there's aliens, clearly, if there's aliens, we have to get out there and say everything about the Bible is now wrong because of this. I mean, come on. That's that, man. I mean, really. And then the third point of the PsyOp, what about this increase in interest in aliens and incorporating alien thought into Christian thought? Okay, note this is the same thing that's been done with the LGBT mindset, transgenderism. We talked a couple weeks ago about the church that did the drag queen Bible time. Really, come on up. I'm the male pastor, but damn, I'm a girl. Of course, no surprise that the only other two pastors in that church, three pastors. There's the transvestite and the two ladies. Maybe we got problems there. But they're starting to incorporate all of these elements. Now they're trying to incorporate the alien elements into the church. So we have a couple guys. Endwell pastor and author makes a UFO sightings. They may be angels and in the Bible. Ooh, kind of like we talked about that at the very beginning. The Pentagon says they do not know of any force they're dealing with, but Moses could have said amen to that, says Reverend Barry Downing. Downing, the pastor emeritus at Northminster Presbyterian Church in Endwell, has been writing books talking about UFOs more than 50 years, written the Bible and Flying Saucers and Bible UFO Revelations. New revelations about military pilots seeing unidentified objects spurred many questions. We have many scientific and religious mysteries. This guy, by the way, is the more sane one. He's just basically going on and talking about maybe the angels were ETs or aliens in our understanding all along, but they wouldn't use that language in biblical times. The biblical people were pre-space age. So to solve the problem is how do you translate and interpret the Bible? Once again, he's saying, yeah, all of these references to angels, it's really aliens. That's what he's saying. He's at least the sane one. This guy here... Are the UFOs in the Bible? This guy here goes so far as to believe that the parting of the Red Sea was an alien spacecraft. All of the stuff regarding the pillar of fire was the UFO. They're basically following UFO throughout the desert. Come on, guys. Why? If this is really UFO, do they not have like alien technology? They could just come down and beamed up Pharaoh. Give him an anal probe in front of Egypt. Better Egypt back off. Whoa, stay away from the Israelites, man. They anal probe over there. But that's literally what this guy's saying. Not the anal probe stuff. I made that up. But he's talking about the pillar of fire, not a terrestrial paradise. Okay, yeah. Eden, here, have a look down here. Eden is not a terrestrial paradise, but an ancient laboratory where aliens created humans and spliced their own genes into them, thus creating the image of God. He says the Nephilim, a race of giants mentioned, were descendants of the aliens. The Noetic flood, Hayes argues, was a way of scrapping a genetically flawed humanity and starting over. Even Jesus was an alien, according to his reading of Scripture. Great! That's all we need. Jesus is an alien. Sure, it all sounds crazy, but with aliens in the headlines this spring, The Pillar decided to take a look at some of those series and get the facts. And so, there's information there. They have a big interview, and it's all a bunch of stuff. The Pillar, what about angels with bodily needs? So we see the book of Judges, book of Genesis, and quite a few places. Angels appear to eat with humans, and they're visiting. We shouldn't perceive them as angels as being needed physical sustenance, but rather they appear in human forms. They take on the appearance of needing food, when in fact are pure intelligences that don't have bodies, properly speaking. They just appear with bodies. All right. So it's just all these different alien things and how that all relates. Very, very fascinating stuff. But all of this does is it starts to incorporate the thought of aliens and merging it and blending it with the church. And is that not what the devil does? He tries to mix theologies. This is why the Israelites, they go into Canaan. Your task is to completely annihilate all of the people who are there. Why are you to completely annihilate all the people who are there? You're supposed to completely annihilate all the people who are there because you do not want their religion mixing with yours. As long as we keep on polluting the Christian message, we are going to have problems with God. That is a problem. And so brings us to our last point. The presence of aliens means all the world religions are wrong. And so it is only a call to rally around something else. Can we not think about maybe, the New World Order? It was Revelation 13, 7 and 8. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and overcome them. And authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. All who dwell on the earth will worship him. Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. So, in other words, on this one here, we're looking at if aliens are here, all the religions are wrong. We have to rally around something else. Guys, that's the point of Signs. That's what happened in the movie Signs. Remember that? With Mel Gibson, right? Signs comes down and they're like, oh, all the world's religions are all uniting over that. And in reality, got questions, your questions, biblical answers. Could an alien deception be part of the end times? We know the events surrounding the end times described in the Bible will include powerful deception. Recently, interest has been rising about the theory this deception will include alien beings from another planet. Odd as it may seem, this theory is entirely plausible from a Christian perspective. Although the Bible gives us no word about whether or not aliens exist, there's no inclusion of them in the creation account, no mention of them elsewhere. The Bible does tell us about visitors from another world, which is the spiritual world. If you read through this article, it goes through and talks a lot about how the deception is all part of this. So are aliens part of this giant deception? Yes, I think it is. This is why I'm more inclined to not believe in the idea of aliens. I think it's more about blending all of these things and thoughts together. It's about mixing all this stuff together. Here is the point, okay? The powers that be want to destroy our whole system of religion. They tear it down piece by piece by piece. You can't go in and tear down the whole of Christendom at once. You got to strip away this. You got to strip away that. Realize in many churches now, you cannot go into many churches and declare the truth that there are two genders. I had a talking to at a church about that. The Bible's not that clear. I'm sorry, you're not a qualified pastor. You lost it. You didn't even get through Genesis chapter 2 before you lost your qualification to being a pastor, because the Bible says we were created male and female. But we go in there and we can't talk about the truth about the genders. We can't oppose LGBT mindset in many churches in America. Oh, you're just hateful. You're a homophobe. I'm sorry, I'm not a homophobe. It's just that God says don't do that. And whatever thoughts are going on in your head, that's called temptation. Temptation is fine. Don't act on it. Soon we may be forced to believe what they say is true about aliens. Look at the big tech, guys. Big tech is being so censored all over the place. You know, we can't talk about, like, you will get completely demonetized, even risking your channel gets shut down if you don't carry the narrative about climate change or the coof, or certainly anything about being jabbed by Fauci ouchies. You'll get channels taken down. You have to believe what they say is true. And if you don't believe it, you at least can't say so. We may be forced to say that what they say about aliens is true. And that means that our faith will be polluted as we are polluted by false theologies. You see, if I come down and say, all right, we're going to come down here and we're going to say there's aliens, or we come down and say there are no aliens. There is no provision for them. This is not true. And even if we don't have real physical alien bodies and analyze their DNA and found he's got DNA. Remember from E.T., right? They made a big deal that E.T. has DNA. We come find, what was that? He doesn't have 4 nucleotides. He has 5, something like that. I forget. Something about the nucleotide differences in E.T., you know. And so, if we got some actual space alien and all this kind of stuff, sure, we got evidence. But if we just have to rely on what they say is the truth and we get completely deplatformed if we say the counter narrative to that, well, that's kind of forced, isn't it? And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So I think that this is way more of a PsyOp than it is anything about aliens. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.